We're going to need you to clear your things. The new intern starts Monday. I blinked at Mr. Holbrook, assuming I'd misheard him. This was my desk, my chair, my corner. I'd built an entire department from this spot, stayed through 2 acquisitions, 3 CEOs, and the darkest financial quarters the company had ever faced. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He smiled like he was doing me a favor. "We thought you could work from the hot desking area for now." I looked over at the row of community tables crammed against the break room wall. Loud, temporary, impersonal. The kind of place freelancers checked emails, not where department leads ran operations. But I didn't argue. I just nodded, slowly packed up my framed photo of Mom, my pens, the mug with my name, Madison Rivera, etched in gold, and walked away. I wasn't always the kind of woman who let things go with a nod and a half smile. But corporate America teaches you something fast. Emotions don't earn you a seat at the table. Results do. And I had results. For 7 straight years, I outperformed every quarterly target, saved the company from a lawsuit, and doubled our client retention rate, all while being paid less than the junior male manager who barely lasted a year. But let's rewind. I'm Madison Rivera, 32, daughter of Cuban immigrants, raised in Tampa, Florida, and fueled by 2 things: my mother's resilience and an obsession with systems that work. My mother, Liana, worked double shifts at a laundromat to get me through college. I remember her hands, cracked from bleach and detergent, packing me sandwiches before my early morning classes at the University of South Florida. "You make your name mean something, Mija," she would always say. "You make sure no one forgets it." I majored in business administration and minored in data analytics. That desk, yes, the one they gave to the intern, wasn't just wood and steel to me. It was the altar where I sacrificed my 20s. My first job out of college was with Keller and Dade Consulting, a mid-sized corporate strategy firm based in downtown Miami. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a foot in the door. I worked as an assistant analyst, taking the bus at 5:30 a.m. because I couldn't afford parking. I stayed late, took notes in meetings I wasn't invited to, and volunteered to proofread reports just so I could read them. One day, our senior VP at the time, Jared Keller, caught me correcting a forecasting error in a pitch deck that wasn't even mine. "You're sharp," he said. "Why are you an admin?" I shrugged. "Because no one offered me anything else." He smiled, then didn't say anything. But 3 weeks later, I was promoted to junior analyst. That was 5 years ago. I spent every waking hour after that proving I deserved to be there. I built a predictive model that helped one of our major retail clients recover from a holiday slump. That landed us a $2.5 million retainer. I didn't get a bonus. I didn't even get a thank you, but I got that desk. It wasn't in a corner office or by the window, but it was mine. Madison Station. I brought in a tiny desk lamp with a yellow shade and a coaster my abuela had crocheted. I even grew a little snake plant next to my monitor. It survived every winter, every layoff, and every restructuring. Like me, I'd watched new hires come and go. I trained most of them, especially the interns. Some wide-eyed and humble, others arrogant and overconfident. But I never expected they'd replace me with one. The day I was asked to give up my desk, I recognized the girl they gave it to. Alyssa Chandler. Blonde, crisp blazer, Ivy League resume. She'd been with us 2 weeks. I had trained her personally. She shadowed me, took notes on my systems, and even asked me how I organized my files so cleanly. She smiled when I passed her that day, already sliding into my chair like it was made for her. "Thanks, Maddie," she chirped. Maddie. No one calls me that, but my mother. And maybe Elias, my best friend since college, who's now a graphic designer in Chicago. He was the first person I called that night. "They gave it to an intern?" he asked, incredulous. "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh. "Guess I've been too quiet lately. Not enough politics, not enough FaceTime. I don't know." "You built their whole data system." "Doesn't matter," I whispered. "It's not about value. It's about visibility." He was quiet for a moment, then said something I didn't expect. Then maybe it's time they see your name on the deed. At first, I laughed. Out loud. The idea of owning anything felt foreign. I was still living in a one-bedroom apartment with creaky pipes and a landlord who fixed things with duct tape. But his words stuck with me. They echoed as I sat alone that night, sipping cold tea, staring at my laptop, and pulling up the company's building registry out of curiosity. That's when I saw it. The property wasn't owned by Keller and Dade directly. It was under a shell LLC named Harborfront Management, and through a little digging, thanks to public records, I found that the LLC was being auctioned. It had been put up quietly during a legal restructure when the firm defaulted on a commercial loan last quarter. I felt my heart thud. The building was for sale, and nobody at the firm knew. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced. If I could find a way to secure funding, if I could beat any offers before it went public, if I could take control of the lease. It was impossible. And yet every time I thought of that intern sitting at my desk, every time I remembered how quickly they erased me, the idea started to feel more like destiny. I wasn't the kind of person who chased revenge. But maybe it wasn't revenge. Maybe it was reclamation. The days that followed were a blur of fake smiles and bottled-up resentment. I still showed up on time, still submitted detailed reports, still gave updates during Monday meetings while Alyssa, intern-turned-desk thief, scribbled notes from the very place I used to sit. But something had changed. Underneath the surface, I was building something. Quietly, carefully. By the end of that week, I'd contacted a friend of Elias's, Jordan Kim, a real estate attorney based in Orlando. We met over Zoom one evening while I sat on my living room floor, papers spread out like a crime board behind me. So you're telling me this building, where your company is based, is being auctioned through a holding company? Jordan asked. I nodded. Harborfront Management. I pulled the Secretary of State filings. They're liquidating multiple properties. This one's scheduled for silent auction within the next 60 days. Do they know you're looking? No, I said, lips twitching. And I don't want them to until it's too late. Jordan chuckled. This is either genius or insane. Maybe both. We spent hours creating a plan. I wasn't rich, not even close. My savings were modest. But over the years, I'd invested conservatively in tech stocks and had a decent credit score. And thanks to a small inheritance from my late grandmother, kept untouched for years, I had just enough to make a low but serious bid. Jordan helped me create a holding company under my name, Solterra Capital LLC. On paper, it had no connection to me. I took a personal loan to match my liquid assets and submitted an early sealed bid with legal protections to prevent disclosure until ownership was finalized. I didn't tell anyone. Not Elias. Not even my mother. The weeks dragged on. At work, the passive disrespect continued. Tiny exclusions from leadership meetings, accidental omissions from email chains, and worst of all, Alyssa presenting one of my frameworks as her own. I could feel it, the erosion of my credibility. And still, I said nothing. Because power is quiet when it's real. Then, the call came. It was a Thursday morning. I'd just gotten back from grabbing a lukewarm latte, pretending not to hear my coworkers gossiping near the elevator. My phone buzzed. It was Jordan. Congratulations, he said. You just became the landlord of 702 Biscayne Avenue. I froze, standing in the lobby with paper coffee in hand, heart thudding. What? Your bid was accepted. Paperwork's finalized. You officially own the building. 1,000 emotions hit me all at once. Shock, fear, satisfaction, panic, pride. All I could say was, Holy **T. That weekend, I met Jordan in person to sign the final paperwork. He handed me an envelope with the title deed inside, freshly notarized. My name wasn't on it directly, just Solterra Capital. But I knew what it meant. I was no longer just an employee at Keller and Dade. I was their landlord. The following Monday, I arrived at the office 20 minutes early. Dressed sharper than usual, tailored navy suit, red lipstick, and the heels I usually reserved for investor pitches. I walked in, nodding at the security guard like always. But this time, I held a file folder instead of my laptop. People passed me in the hall, not really noticing anything different. Until I stepped into the conference room for our weekly leadership briefing. Holbrook, the smug VP who had taken my desk away, was already seated, flipping through his iPad. Alyssa was next to him, all blonde ambition and baby pink folders. I sat across from them and slid the folder to the center of the table. "What's this?" Holbrook asked without looking up. "Something you'll want to read before the meeting starts," I said calmly. He opened it, eyes scanning the first page. Then he stopped. His brow furrowed. He flipped again. Then again. "What is this?" "It's a notice of property transfer," I said. "Effective last Friday, the building was sold to a new entity. Solterra Capital LLC. He looked up. "And?" I smiled. "I am Solterra Capital." Silence. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to hold its breath. Holbrook stared at me, then at the papers, then at me again. His face drained of color. He sputtered. "That's not possible." "It is," I said, my tone calm but firm. "I placed a sealed bid. It was accepted. As of now, your lease is up for renewal under my terms." Alyssa's mouth dropped open. She looked at me like I'd grown horns. "You bought the building?" she said, stunned. I turned to her with a smile. Funny when an intern can inspire. More silence. This time, thick with tension. I stood, gathering the papers. "You'll find a lease renewal proposal in your inbox. You have 10 business days to sign or vacate." Holbrook's jaw clenched. "You can't do this." I leaned in slightly. "I already did." And with that, I walked out of the room. Heart pounding, hands tingling, blood surging like music through my veins. No fireworks. No applause. Just the quiet satisfaction of reclaiming everything they thought they could take. The fallout was immediate. By the time I returned to my temporary hot desk in the break room, yes, the same one shoved beside the microwave and vending machine, my inbox had exploded. 27 emails. Half from legal. Half from execs. But I didn't open them. Not yet. I made myself a cup of peppermint tea, just the way I always did. Let the kettle hiss. Let them stew. I took my time walking back to my spot, and just as I sat down, my Slack pinged. From C. Holbrook. Conference room. Now. I almost laughed. Now he wanted to talk. The entire executive team was waiting when I stepped into the glass-walled room. CEO Patricia Gibbons, CFO Trevor Lynn, and, of course, Holbrook, pacing like a cornered animal. Alyssa wasn't there this time. This was above her pay grade. Patricia gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Madison, we'd like to clarify a few things." I nodded politely. "Of course." Trevor cleared his throat. "We've been made aware of the property transfer. It's unexpected." "I'm sure," I said. "But everything is above board. Documents filed. Permits in place. My legal team is available to verify." Holbrook slammed his palm on the table. "This is betrayal." I tilted my head. "You gave my desk to an intern, Craig. It wasn't personal. Neither was the acquisition." He glared at me. "You planned this behind our backs. After being left out of 3 strategic planning meetings, 2 leadership promotions, and every bonus tier since 2021? Yeah, I planned something." Patricia leaned forward. "Look, Madison, we understand your frustration. And clearly you've proven yourself resourceful. But this puts the company in a complicated position. I'm offering lease renewal at fair market value," I said. "Nothing hostile. No eviction, unless that's your choice." Trevor looked impressed. Patricia looked concerned. But Holbrook? He was spiraling. "This isn't about fairness," he barked. "This is about control. She's trying to take over." I turned to him slowly. "Craig, if I wanted control, I'd raise your rent so high the entire C-suite would be operating from a strip mall." He stepped toward me, veins popping at his temple. "You're ungrateful." There it was. That old, poison word. Ungrateful. Used every time a woman dared to outgrow the cage she was handed. Ungrateful. I repeated. "Let's talk about gratitude then." And I laid it all out. The years I stayed late without extra pay. The projects I rescued that were credit snatched by others. The time I trained interns and watched them get promoted over me. The bonuses I didn't receive. The raises that never came. The meetings I wasn't invited to. The times I was told I was too quiet, too intense, or not quite leadership material. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just spoke, with clarity and years of exhaustion tempered into focus. And the room got very, very quiet. Then something unexpected happened. Patricia leaned back and said softly, "I always knew we were underusing you." That made Holbrook flinch. "What are you saying?" he snapped. She looked at him flatly. "I'm saying, maybe it's time we start listening." I could see it in her eyes. She was recalculating. Not out of compassion, but strategy. Leaders like her always looked for the next safe bet. And right now, I was the bet. She turned to me. "Let's talk about your vision. If we were to stay, what would you want from this company?" I took a breath. This was the moment. But before I could answer, someone knocked on the glass door. It was Eva, a junior account manager I had mentored years ago. Quiet, sharp, often overlooked. She looked nervous, but determined. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I need to say something." Patricia gestured for her to continue. Eva stepped into the room and faced us all. "I just wanted to say, if Madison is leading something, I want to be part of it. She's the reason I stayed through 2 downsizings. The reason half of us didn't quit when Craig made that stupid CRM switch. She taught me how to negotiate my first client contract. No one else even noticed I was drowning." She looked at Holbrook. "Least of all you." Then she turned back to me. "If you're building something, I want in." My throat tightened. I hadn't expected an ally to step forward. Not in public. But Eva wasn't the last. The next day, I received quiet messages from others, Layla from finance, Omar in client ops, even James in legal, all saying the same thing. "If there's a place in your vision for people like me, I'm ready." By the end of the week, Patricia scheduled a formal meeting with her board to renegotiate the lease. Holbrook tried everything, guilt trips, threats, even suggesting I'd sabotage the company by ambushing them with a secret buyout. But no one was listening to him anymore. His power shrank with every passing hour. And for the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking to fit the room. The final straw came 2 weeks later, when Patricia offered me a new role. Chief Strategy Officer, reporting directly to the board if I wanted it. I took a long breath before answering. "No," I said. Patricia blinked. "No." I smiled. "I'm not interested in fixing what you all broke. But I will be your landlord. Fair lease. Clear boundaries. No favors." And then I stood, offered my hand, and ended the meeting. I could feel Craig's glare burning a hole in my back. But he couldn't touch me now. Outside, as I stepped onto the sunlit sidewalk, Eva caught up with me. "You really said no?" I said yes to myself. She grinned. "So, what happens now?" I looked up at the office windows, my windows now, and said, "Now we build something better." The first time I walked into Holbrook and Myers as their new owner, I wore the same black pumps they made fun of in the break room. I did it on purpose. Those shoes had carried me through the worst humiliation of my career. Now, they would walk me right through the front doors of a company I bought with my own damn money. I had my lawyer, Zoe, to my left and an HR consultant to my right. No one recognized me at first. I watched a few heads peek up from cubicles, curious, but unaware. That suited me fine. I didn't need a red carpet. I needed an agenda. I headed straight for the executive boardroom. The meeting was already in progress. Senior partners discussing budget projections, completely unaware that the papers they were reviewing had been sent by me the day before under a different corporate entity, Rivera Holdings. "Sorry to interrupt," I said, smiling at the familiar sight of the same men who tossed me aside like I was optional. Mr. Holbrook stood up, clearly irritated. "Excuse me, this is a closed." "It's not anymore," I replied. I handed him a folder and continued. "I've recently acquired a controlling interest in H&, effective immediately. This office, along with its assets, contracts, and liabilities, belongs to Rivera Holdings." Silence. You could feel the room freeze over. Holbrook blinked like I was speaking another language. That's what. I own the company, Gary, I said, savoring the taste of his first name. And just so there's no confusion, let me spell it out. You work for me now. The silence cracked into disbelief. One of the senior analysts looked like he was going to drop his coffee. You're joking, Holbrook said, but his voice was thin. Not even a little. You remember that intern you gave my desk to? I smiled. She sent me a thank you message on LinkedIn last week. Said the hot desk area was hell. His face flushed. I leaned forward, placing both hands on the polished wood of the boardroom table, the same table I'd once been too junior to sit at. We're going to make some changes around here, I said calmly. New leadership. New culture. Respect, for starters. Holbrook tried to recover, pretending he was somehow on board. Well, Madison, of course, if there's anything we can do to support the transition. I cut him off. You can start by clearing your desk, I said. My assistant will schedule your exit interview. And just like that, the power shift was complete. By the end of the day, Holbrook's nameplate was gone. The office, once filled with the usual buzz of whispered gossip and shallow congratulations, had turned into a minefield of silent stares and careful footsteps. People didn't know whether to look me in the eye or look away. Some offered nervous smiles. Others tried to act like they hadn't been part of the problem. I remembered them all. Claire from accounting, who once told me I was too sensitive after I reported being excluded from a client dinner. Jason, the project manager who once stole credit for a pitch deck I worked on for 6 weeks. And Denise, the executive assistant who gave my intern my desk with a little too much glee. Now, all of them were scrambling to align themselves with the new leadership. Me. Funny how fast people change when power changes hands. I didn't need revenge, not the petty kind at least. What I wanted was transformation. I called for an all-staff meeting the next morning. No suits. No titles. Just truth. I stood in front of everyone and said, I was underestimated here. Laughed at. Ignored. Some of you were part of that. Others watched it happen and said nothing. I'm not here to humiliate anyone, but I am here to tell you, this will not be the same company. I laid out a vision. A company that valued equity over ego, ideas over hierarchy, and people, all people, over profit margins. Some employees looked inspired. A few even applauded. But there were those who shrank back, already plotting their exits. That was fine. This chapter wasn't written for them. 2 weeks later, I walked past the desk that used to be mine. The new intern, Amber, stood up nervously, clearly aware of who I was now. She stammered, Ms. Rivera, if you'd prefer, I can move. I smiled. No need. Keep it. I've outgrown it. I walked away, my heels clicking against the marble floor, a symphony of full-circle justice. Some nights, when the office was quiet and the glass walls reflected only city lights and ghosted memories, I'd sit alone in my corner suite and think about how far I'd come. Not just in terms of money or title, but who I had become. A year ago, I was a girl sitting at a borrowed desk, pouring my entire self into a job that gave me barely a sliver of recognition. I kept thinking that if I worked harder, smiled more, made myself small enough not to cause friction but big enough to be useful, maybe they'd finally see me. They never did. But I saw myself. Eventually. That's the part no one tells you. You don't rise because the world grants you permission. You rise when you stop waiting for it. Buying the company wasn't about power, it was about reclaiming my worth. Every time someone called me emotional for caring too much or too ambitious for dreaming too big, they added fuel to the fire. They thought they were dimming me. Really, they were forging me. And I had changed. I no longer apologized for taking up space. I no longer stayed quiet in meetings. I no longer waited for praise. I led. I spoke. I owned. And the most surprising part? I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I realized that the ones who hurt me weren't powerful. They were afraid. Afraid of change. Afraid of women like me who wouldn't play small forever. And when I looked at them through that lens, their power shrunk. They weren't giants. just shadows I had outgrown. Now, I make it a point to find people like the girl I used to be, overlooked, underestimated, hungry, and I give them more than just a desk. I give them opportunity, voice, and belief. Because that's what I needed once. And giving it now is the most powerful thing I've ever done. A few weeks after the acquisition, I got an anonymous invitation, just a cream envelope on my new mahogany desk with my name embossed in silver ink. Farewell drinks, Mike's retirement. Mike. The same Mike who once looked me in the eye and told me, "You're replaceable. Everyone is." The same man who laughed when they gave my desk to an intern without even telling me. I stared at the envelope for a moment, the irony thick as fog. But something inside me told me to go. Not for him, but for myself. That Friday evening, I walked into the rooftop bar they'd chosen. Same tired spot they'd used for every afterwork event. Familiar faces scattered around the terrace. I noticed how a few turned pale when they saw me, like ghosts watching their own funeral. Mike was already a few drinks in. When he saw me, his bravado shrank behind a cracked smile. Well, he muttered, swirling his glass. "Didn't expect you'd come." I smiled. "Didn't think you'd still be here." He blinked, as if my presence made his retirement suddenly real. "This place it's changed," he said. "Different energy. Less bark, more bite." That's what happens when people are finally heard. I let that hang. He leaned closer, quieter now. "I was wrong about you. You weren't replaceable. I just didn't want you to be bigger than me." I didn't flinch. "And now," he sighed. "You own the whole damn building. Hard to argue with that." I left soon after. I didn't need his validation. But I wanted to close the circle, to walk through the same door they once pushed me out of, and leave on my own terms. As I got into my car, the intern who had taken my desk, Jamie, ran up behind me. "Miss Carter," she said breathlessly. "I just wanted to say thank you for keeping me. And for promoting me. I know what happened before, and I smiled. Don't thank me yet. Just prove they were wrong about both of us." She nodded fiercely. I saw my past in her eyes, and maybe, just maybe, she saw her future in mine. And that's the twist, isn't it? They gave away my desk, so I bought the office. But more than that, I built a seat at the table where no one else would pull out a chair. For myself. And now for others too. It's funny how one small humiliation can spark a revolution. The desk they gave away wasn't just wood and drawers. It was my place, my presence, my proof that I belonged. And when they removed it like I was a smudge on the glass, they didn't realize they were igniting something far more powerful than they could control. Buying the office was never just about money. It was about rewriting the rules that had always kept people like me silent, compliant, and disposable. The moment I signed those papers, I wasn't just reclaiming my space. I was creating a new blueprint. Today, the company culture is unrecognizable from what it was. We don't operate by titles and fear anymore. We lead with mentorship, vision, and value. Interns aren't cannon fodder. They're seeds of potential. People aren't thrown out for speaking up. They're promoted when they do. Jamie, the intern they gave my desk to, now runs her own department. She redecorated that very office, kept the desk, but added her own nameplate. Jamie Rivers, head of innovation. She tells me she keeps it not as a symbol of where she started, but of what's possible when someone's worth is seen, not dismissed. And me? I still sit in the same chair most mornings. Only now, it's in a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that stretches farther than I ever imagined. Sometimes I glance at that old conference room, where I once stood humiliated as they packed up my things without a word. Now, people knock on my door, not to strip me of a desk, but to ask how I built an empire out of their rejection. I smile and tell them, it all started when they thought they could erase me. Turns out, they were just making space for something bigger.